Good morning from WKYT News. I'm Bill Bryant, and we welcome you to Kentucky Newsmakers. So good to have you here. Later, history will be made on the Kentucky Supreme Court. Justice-elect Pamela Goodwine will be joining us shortly. But first, Somerset Mayor Keck is here. Keck, who ran for governor last year, continues to lead his growing city along Lake Cumberland. Lots of things happening there. Known for tourism and a rich history as a retail center, Somerset has also grown its footprint in education and industry. There are also challenges, including those faced by other places like homelessness and substance abuse. Mayor Keck is joining us now. Welcome back to Kentucky Newsmakers. Thanks for being here.
Great to be here.
Appreciate it. Like we said last time you were here, you were a candidate for governor. Did you learn some things traveling the state that
I learned a lot.
Made you more effective back home?
I hope so. We took some ideas from other communities, two in particular actually, in northern Kentucky, the Life Learning Center, one of the most, and not knowing the exact subject matter today, but dealing with recovery and what I like to say redemption, that then what story after recovery. So we're bringing Life Learning Center to Somerset. We're thrilled that they're going to expand their footprint and likely be the first destination for them. And then a Boys and Girls Club. A friend of mine in Glasgow and Barron County was hosting me in that tour, and he was so passionate about that club. And I left with tear-filled eyes and said, you know what, governor's race, regardless, we're going to have us a Boys and Girls Club, and we do now. So certainly learned a lot, met some amazing folks, and maybe got humbled along the way a tad, but it's still a privilege to get to lead my hometown.
Somerset is seeing a growth. You're about the largest population base without an interstate running right through it, but you've had significant road improvements in recent years. Have those made a difference for the community in terms of attracting business and tourists?
Certainly. Our tourism economy has been thriving. We're having record year after record year after record year. We're really proud of that. We want folks to be able to get in and out of our community easier, but a lot of that infrastructure is for the long haul. Those are 20 and 30 and 40-year projects to make sure that the growth can sustain itself. We're excited about the future in Somerset. We think that we're challenging some paradigms of what's possible in southeastern Kentucky, really any rural city, not just in our Commonwealth, but across our country. I think that is the next wave of growth, is in these smaller communities across the heartland.
How important is tourism?
Oh, it's critical. I think it's the third largest economy in Kentucky, but it's certainly vital for us. Over 4 million visitors a year coming to Lake Cumberland. And now we're excited about the potential to be on the Bourbon Trail, and believe we will with the opening of Horse Soldier Farms either late next year or early in 26.
Now tell us about that project. There were some delays. It's on track now, it appears?
It is, and what a beautiful project. Veterans coming home in transition. I think so often we want to speed that process up. But these men in particular were the first fighters into Afghanistan after 9/11. They fought in wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. They've been to Northern Africa. They transitioned to bring the band back together, if you will, as a hobby company, and they wanted a forever home. We sent them a cold email pitching Lake Cumberland. Little did I know that they had done training missions on the Cumberland River some 20 years ago, and this is their coming home story. This is their forever home, and we're really, really proud that they chose Somerset.
Many of our towns seem to have found the sort of secret sauce in embracing and celebrating their history, and you made reference to that. You said really that's happening all across the country. You redid a downtown theater. There was one project in that regard. How is Somerset really embracing its past and planning for the future at the same time?
Well, I love those words. I talk about honoring our past, making sure we leverage the foundations that we had, and we look to the future. I think you can marry vision and energy with, I have a lot of both of those things, but with wisdom, experience from our forefathers, if you will. And across East Kentucky in particular, I think it's critical that we stop apologizing for what we're not and really embrace who we are. You're hearing the term mountain people a lot more than we used to, and I think in a prideful way, that's healthy. Certainly J.D. Vance probably brought some exposure to the region, some good, some bad, but leaning into the things that make us special, some of those God-given attributes that we might have in the foothills of Appalachia. I'm sure proud of our culture and our heritage, and I think more and more people need to be.
So many of our cities are also dealing with some challenges, homelessness for one. You've had a panhandling issue that has come to the forefront down there, and led to a call for an ordinance to address it. How significant is that problem, and what do you think you will do in that regard?
It's minor for now, but we try to nip things in the bud before they become major problems. We started to see some panhandling and pedestrians really getting into the roadways, not just standing on the corners, and we want to make sure we keep those folks safe, but also those that are operating our motor vehicles. You don't need aggressively knocking on doors in the middle of a red light exchange. That's not healthy for anybody. We wanted to get out in front of it before it became a real problem.
So there's a balance there, and
there is.
How you do it.
Compassionately firm is what I would say. We understand the need for folks to try to raise money, but we want them to do it in a safe way.
Home building, home availability is a major issue across this state. A shortage everywhere we hear of.
Yep.
Do you have an approach to that may be working?
We've spent a lot of time with our developers trying to find ways to either incentivize or encourage. We're just trying to make it a little bit easier. We think our city government needs to say yes as quickly as possible, not like so many governments where the bureaucracy gets in the way and people don't want to come. We added what's called local expanded jurisdiction, where some of the approval process can happen in Somerset instead of going to Frankfort, where it can get bogged down because they have so much. We're seeing growth in home building. Our inventory is really low, like a lot of other communities. I think that should be celebrated. This is a problem we should embrace. Try to come up with new ways for developers to want to be in these markets.
But you know the experience of a mayor. If somebody wants to do a development, they buy some property and you go for a zone change, and all of a sudden that meeting fills up with people due to concerns about traffic, and we want growth, but not right here in this area where it's going to be in our way.
That's an interesting point. Just in the last 6 months, I've had more calls of, Mayor, we love all this, but man, the traffic's getting bad. Or we like this, but not sure, the old NIMBY's not in my backyard. But our planning and zoning board's trying to be really considerate of that. They understand my vision, and it is a pro-growth board. I think there's a misnomer in small communities that you can just stay exactly how you are. That's not the reality. Either you're growing and thriving, or you're going to slowly die. And we don't want to be one of those communities that slowly dies. We're going to try to thrive.
The Bluegrass region just had a failure that was rather public in establishing a regional industrial park. Is regionalism a tough concept because of having to come to agreements on sharing revenue, deciding where the park itself may be, and whether that does benefit the other counties or cities or communities?
Yeah, it is. It's a real challenge. Not just sharing revenue, but elected officials like credit, right? And so you're sharing credit. Where is it going to be located? How does that help that individual, whether it be a mayor, a judge, a state rep, or senator? I think it's vital, though, because we're not just competing against each other. We're really competing against Tennessee and Indiana and Ohio. And for some of these jobs, it might be a global competition. And for Kentucky to succeed, I think we have to work together. Now, whether that's in promotion or cheerleading or in a practical way like we're seeing in Rockcastle County with them and Lincoln and Garrett coming together for this potential mega site, I think we need to celebrate when it happens and find ways to kind of put our ego at the door, at the altar, as I like to say at times, and find a way to work together for the benefit of everybody.
Are you seeing some progress in dealing with substance abuse issues in your community?
We are. I mentioned Life Learning Center. I think that's going to be critical. Until that substance abuse ends with a job, which is that redemption piece that I mentioned, they're going to fall victim to that cycle again. We started a reentry program in our jails. So folks will leave the jail with some money in their pocket. That's where they don't feel like they have to go back to that old lifestyle. I think that reentry component, that redemption component, is critical to end that cycle of abuse.
There's talk from a couple of Lexington lawmakers in proposing rules for sober living homes requiring some notification to neighborhoods when one is going in. Is that a tool that may be needed in your view?
It could be. I mean, I've been really, really vocal on this issue. We helped pass a bill to stop the recruitment and solicitation from other states. I think there has to be some accountability to this compassion. This recovery has really become an industry, and I don't think that was the intention. I think that some Medicare and Medicaid abuse has undoubtedly taken place in Kentucky, and while we want to be welcoming and treat folks with open arms, I guess quite literally, there has to be that accountability measure where we don't become the recovery hub of the world. We've got our own resource challenges. I'm all for taking care of those that live in our own communities, but I don't think we can do it for everyone else.
You have long pushed educational opportunities in the Somerset area. There you are, a rather large population base, sort of between the service areas of EKU and Western, and out of the maybe the large footprint of the major, the flagship university and others. How are you moving forward in that regard?
Really, we focused on partnership with our community and technical college. We're blessed to have a KCTCS institution there with Somerset Community College. Congressman Rogers brought some extra opportunities with Southern Kentucky University Center, and trying to make sure we connect dots. Our economic development group has really worked alongside of that community college to say, hey, here are the industries where we know employment can happen right away. We just started heavy equipment operator school, one of the first of its kind. I know they had an announcement this week with a large 3D printing operation in the concrete space, maybe addressing housing specifically. So often resources exist, opportunities exist, we're just not getting them in front of the right people. And I think as mayor, and again with SPEDA, our Economic Development Authority, trying to connect those dots to make sure those resources get in the hands of folks that need it.
As you look at the future, what do you see for Somerset and yourself?
Well, I appreciate you asking. Explosive growth in Somerset, it's a place people want to be. The interest in our community is at an all-time high. We're breaking records, it seems like, every year, whether it be economic development, tourism, or new revenue. But you got to continue to innovate, and I want to be at the forefront or the tip of the spear. Personally, I don't know. It might be a season back in the private sector, and it might be higher office again. I'm flattered when folks ask. I think that in spite of the result, maybe we challenged the system a little bit. We talked about issues that really mattered, and people appreciated that. I think a lot of the things that we addressed in that race have come to pass, and we're going to continue to bring those big, bold ideas to the Commonwealth and see if we can't move our whole state forward.
Well, you ran for governor once. Do you continue to be interested in that, or is there something elsewhere you might have interest in?
Yeah, my heart is Kentucky for sure. Having been an executive most of my adult life in the private sector, and then now as mayor, I'm wired to look towards that. There's been a lot of encouragement for me to look for other office. We've been really, really blessed with the service of Congressman Rogers, and he'll be in that office as long as he wants to be, as he should. And should that opportunity come up down the line, that'd be an opportunity to explore. But right now, my focus is Somerset, my focus is Kentucky, and until further notice, it'll remain so. All
right, thank you so much for coming.
Absolutely.
We do appreciate it.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
Mayor of Somerset, Alan Keck. Now, stay with us in just a moment. Justice Pamela Goodwine is coming next on Kentucky Newsmakers, making history and an inspiring story that you have to hear. So we hope you'll stay with us. We'll have that coming right up as Kentucky Newsmakers continues. Welcome back to Kentucky Newsmakers. So good to have you with us on WKYT. Suddenly, lots of history is being made on the Kentucky Supreme Court. For the first time ever, it will be a majority female court, with 4 of the 7 justices being women. It will also have its first female Chief Justice, with Deborah Hembry Lambert. And Judge Pamela Goodwine will join the court as the first African-American female ever elected to the Kentucky Supreme Court. Justice Goodwine is joining us right now, who, by the way, serves on the Court of Appeals at this point. Welcome, Your Honor, and congratulations.
Thank you, Bill.
Appreciate you coming in. You've said that this was the culmination of a lifetime dream and goal, and you really did rise through the ranks as a judge. Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yes, I did, Bill. It's been a dream 45 years in the making, actually. I came to Lexington as a court stenographer in November of 1979. So it's been about 25 years. And I traveled the entire state as a court reporter. And actually then, after 4.5 years of freelancing, went to work for Fayette Circuit Court. Judge Mitch Mead, Judge Angelucci, Judge Keller, and worked there for 4.5 years. But during that time, I got very, very sick. Had to take some time off from being a court reporter, had to withdraw from school, and after going through 18 months of rehab, went back to the courtroom as a court reporter, and they started to phase out court reporting. You may remember when the courts began to video record and audio record the proceedings. But at that time, I decided to become a legal secretary, worked for Judge Suzanne Shively with the Department of Workers' Compensation, and shared my dream with her. At that time, I still needed to finish undergrad and go to law school. She was very, very encouraging about that, and I had to then re-enroll at the University of Kentucky in 1988 and finished undergrad in 1991 and then went on to law school in 1994.
That is an amazing start to the journey, right? We're not
journey.
Even to when you get elected district judge.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then you rose to the ranks, district judge, circuit judge, justice of the Court of Appeals, and now to the Kentucky Supreme Court.
Absolutely.
Nobody's ever done that before.
There have been 4 men who have served at every level of the Kentucky judiciary.
You're the first woman.
I'm the first woman to do that. And it's obviously not easy to do, but that's something that I wanted to do. I wanted to serve at every level of Kentucky's judiciary because I think that at each higher level, if you've served at the lower level, you understand not only the processes that come with the position, but also have that interaction with the parties, the attorneys, and the litigants.
So when you started as a stenographer, you had this goal that someday you would serve on the Kentucky Supreme Court.
I did. And in fact, when I interviewed at Wyatt Terrett & Combs for my first position as an attorney, they asked me what I wanted to do with my law degree, and my response was, I want to be a justice on the Kentucky Supreme Court. And Barbara Edelman looked at me and said, well, we don't have one of those here, but if you want to be an associate, we'd love to have you.
When you look back, do you realize the barriers you were breaking along the way? I mean, were you intentional about that?
I was intentional. I was absolutely intentional about that. I grew up during the Civil Rights era and admired Justice Thurgood Marshall as the first African American on the U.S. Supreme Court, and then Justice Sandra Day O'Connor as the first woman. And I literally at that time said, I want to be the first. I want to be the first to make a difference. I didn't know at that time that it was going to be in Kentucky, but when I came to Kentucky as a court stenographer, I came with that goal in mind.
How does it feel now to have accomplished that?
It's a profound honor. I feel very, very good to have accomplished that goal and that dream.
What do you think when it's reported now that a majority of the students in law school in Kentucky right now are women? The profession has changed.
The profession has changed. And in fact, when I interviewed I went into the courthouse in Mahoning County, where I'm from, at 16, and there were no women. There were no women even working as court reporters at that time. It was a male-dominated profession, and I am absolutely ecstatic to see the number of women that are attending law school, that are graduating from law school, and who have the desire to go on and become judges.
Do you believe it is important that the state's highest court have a variety of perspectives?
Absolutely. And this is going to be a historic court. As you indicated, the majority will be women, and the first African American woman will join the court. And I think that diversity is very, very important. I think younger generations should be able to look at our bench at every level and see a reflection of them.
What do you think it will be like to work with justices who have a very different perspective at times than you may have, and maybe different judicial tendencies? How is there that respect, and yet at the same time you may vehemently disagree with your fellow justices?
Absolutely. Well, Bill, I've had that experience for the last 6 years because, as you know, on the Kentucky Court of Appeals, we serve in 3-judge panels. There are 14 judges on the Kentucky Court of Appeals, and we're assigned to cases as a panel. And whether I'm the presiding judge or the associate judge on that case, I have to listen to my colleagues' perspectives. We all look at the facts. We all look at the law. We may look at things differently or bring a different perspective to applying the law to that case, but we have to discuss it. We have to work through those differences. And in the end, I may be in the majority, I may write the majority opinion, but I also may be I may dissent. And if after discussion and conference I still feel strongly about dissenting, I don't have a problem with dissenting.
Why is a strong dissent important, in your opinion?
A strong dissent is important because a lot of policies and procedures and changes in the law have come from very strong dissents. So I think it's important that all of the judges now on the Court of Appeals, again, discuss those differences, discuss how they believe the law should be applied to a particular set of facts. And if they can't agree, then dissent, but support that position.
When you make decisions as a judge, what is that process like? Do you anticipate the gravity of knowing that your rulings, and especially now in the state Supreme Court, could impact people across the state for years to come?
Absolutely. I understand that my decisions could and will likely have an impact. What I hope to bring to the court, again, is how I look at cases. I approach a case, I look at the facts, I look at the law, and then I apply the law to the facts. Now, there are times in which the law is not clear, whether it be constitutional law, statutory law, regulatory law. It may not be clear. So it's how that law, constitutional law provision, statutory provision, or regulatory provision is interpreted. And so sometimes that's where people get a judicial philosophy, if you will, on how that's interpreted. And I don't like to put myself in a box and say I abide by this particular philosophy or I'm this particular type of judge, because I think different cases require different approaches.
But some do. Does that concern you?
No, it doesn't concern me. I think even if a judge believes that they follow a particular philosophy, I think that they have to approach cases, they have to look at the law, they have to apply the law to that particular set of facts. If they say, well, I will only approach it from this particular perspective, then I think that can be dangerous. I don't think our current judges are that way, and I don't think our current justices are that way. I think it's going to be a historic court in the sense that, again, we all bring unique perspectives to the bench. And I think that they welcome my experience, my perspectives, and I think it's going to make for a great court.
Do you think that as you get into this position and you will stay aware of the news and as you do and so forth, that if maybe a law is passed or whatever, you'll think, well, that's coming our way?
Well, I think that that's just the nature of the beast. We have 3 independent branches of government, and it is the judicial branch's job to certainly interpret the law and interpret legislation, and I'm certainly prepared to do that. I don't necessarily sit in the back room and look at every piece of legislation that comes that is passed and say, oh my God, we're going to have to deal with that. I wait until the cases come before me and proceed accordingly. And
it may take a while.
And it may take a while.
The public sometimes wonders why the wheels of justice seem to take so long. But you have quite a perspective of that.
I do have quite a perspective on that. I do think that particularly at the Court of Appeals level where I am now, was able to, when I became part of the court, to eliminate some of prolonging cases. I was able to help make the cases proceed a little more efficiently, the process to work a little more efficiently. But it does take time for cases to work their way through the judicial process.
You had a terrible loss during the election cycle with the deaths of your granddaughter and great-granddaughter, and you took some family time, but you persevered and had to return to your campaign. I know it's been a challenging time.
It has, Bill, yes.
And you're doing okay now?
We're doing okay. We're doing okay, yes.
When you make this history, we know you've already won many awards. You've achieved this important place in Kentucky history already. But what do you hope Kentuckians will say about your years of service to the Commonwealth?
I want the citizens of the Commonwealth of Kentucky to look back and say, she was fair, she was impartial, and she was independent. She made a difference. No matter who came before her, she respected them. She acknowledged everyone. Every single citizen of the Commonwealth of Kentucky has a right to access to justice, and they have a right to have their voices and their cases heard. I wanted to be known for being a judge for everyone, and that is what I want to take to the Supreme Court. My campaign was about unity. It was about independence. It was about impartiality. And as I said, Goodwine for justice for all. And that's what I want to take to the Kentucky Supreme Court.
Supreme Court Justice-elect Pamela Goodwine, thanks for coming.
Thank you very much, Bill. Appreciate it.
Stay with us. We'll wrap up Kentucky Newsmakers in a moment. Welcome back to Kentucky Newsmakers. Hope you enjoyed our interviews today, as I did. Next week, one thing that we'll be doing is that Chief Meteorologist Chris Bailey will join us. He's doing his winter forecast, and that will air on our news next Thursday. His long-range looks, the trends, what we see coming. That will be next Thursday on our news. But then next Sunday on Kentucky Newsmakers, we'll sort of break that down, and I'll ask him why he thinks it's going to snow so much and all of that. That'll be coming up next week. But stay with WKYT News for all the latest online and on air, and we enjoy bringing that to you. And that's Kentucky Newsmakers for this week. We hope you make it a good week ahead.